Roll call.
George Busse, Pat Kinney, George Mika,
Here.
Laura Miranda. Laura Miranda. John Weiner. John Weiner. Yep, I see her there. Okay, John Weiner. Charles Ortman.
We got,
I do see her, yep.
Can you hear me, John Weiner?
John Weiner's here.
Yeah.
All right. Charles
Uh,
Ortman.
Can you hear, can everybody hear me okay, or?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I apologize for not being there. It's been a rough year. This is my third death in the year, so I'm gonna be hanging in as long as I can. Thank you.
Sorry to hear that. Gerald Richardson. And Richard Pufall.
Yes, please. I think we'll do introductions because we do have a new committee member, Laura Miranda, and she has not had a chance to meet anyone on the committee. So we'll just go around and give introductions, and if you're a staff or if you're on the Land Conservation Committee. My name is Mary Jo Gingras. I am the county conservationist with the Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department.
George Busse, Land Conservation Committee. On the Board of Supervisors, I represent the north half of White River and the western half of Jingles.
I'm Pat Kinney. I'm the county board supervisor from the area. I'm kind of north of Northland College. South of Northland College.
So my name is John Weiner. I'm the supervisor for Glidden area.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Matt Bolin, agricultural technician and wildlife damage program coordinator.
Scott Keevan, Land and Water Specialist, Ashland County Land and Water Conservation Department.
Mike Pearl, Civil Engineering Technician.
Seth Hackbarth, Marengo Watershed Project Coordinator, Ashland County.
And I'm George Mick. I chair the committee.
And I'm Carisha Flint. I do the office assistant work, and I apologize. I am not computer savvy so the camera's being a little funky at the moment, so I apologize.
All right, thank you.
And then Miranda, could you introduce yourself, please? And welcome to the committee.
Hello, good morning. My name's Laura Miranda, and I'm the new committee member.
Thank you so much.
All right, public comments. We got Sheila. Yeah, you got to sit down and you got to turn one of them goofy things on. Just push the center button.
Like so.
Next to the donuts. Good morning, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Sheila Mitchell. I'm here today to request that this committee initiate the process of creating a clean water referendum resolution, resulting in that resolution being advanced to county voters as an advisory referendum. Apparently, every community in the state of Wisconsin is facing problems with either water quality, water quantity, or both. Much of the drinking water has become contaminated with lead, nitrates, excess manure runoff from farms, especially CAFOs, as well as plastics or plastic forever chemicals, for example, PFAS and PFOA. In fact, 1.7 million people rely on private wells in Wisconsin, with 47% not even meeting acceptable health standards. All of these chemicals are dangerous to our health, causing cancers, birth defects, and other issues. They should not be in our drinking water. Due to the severity of our state's water issues, there has been a campaign to educate the population of the state by addressing local county boards and their citizens about the urgency of protecting our water. Last year, Bayfield County, along with other counties around the states, started this process, which I am requesting that you take a look into. They drew up a county resolution for clean water, which was made into a joint proclamation with the Red Cliff Tribe. In November, a referendum was put forward to the citizens of Bayfield County related to this proclamation and the rights to clean water. It passed overwhelmingly by nearly 80%. Hopefully, we can do something similar in Ashland County, as water is equally important to us. I have copies of the resolution and the joint proclamation with me that I am happy to hand out. I recently read that globally freshwater demand will outstrip supply by 40% by 2030. When one reads that, I am reminded how lucky we are to live in northern Wisconsin, where fresh water is so abundant. However, there are no guarantees that it will stay clean without protecting it. And this is a first step in making it a priority for ourselves as well as for other counties around the state. Thank you. Does anybody want the? Okay.
Thank you. Tolar?
Good morning. Thanks for letting me in, allowing me to speak. I don't take it for granted. It's tough sitting next to this stuff though, because it's hard for me to keep my mind on what I'm here, but no, I'm off the stuff.
I'm glad, George.
Toller is the name I go by because there's another Ted Griggs somewhere in Ashland County, and I don't want anybody to blame that guy for what I do. So Toller is my driver's license name, as in, do you know how fast you were going? Toller? And I said, no, officer, I don't. I don't have a lot to add to what Sheila said. She pretty well summarized it, and telling this committee or the county the importance of protecting water in Wisconsin is like telling the Green Bay Packers the importance of scoring points. It's kind of taken for granted. So everything that Sheila read is kind of boilerplate what's going on in the state, the groundwater, the rivers, and you guys know an awful lot of this, a lot of it probably a lot better than I do. But a resolution is another brick in the wall, of the foundation to let our friends in Madison who wind up making a lot of these very important decisions about how the rest of us are going to wind up living, stand up and take notice, that we're not just up here doing nothing. And I'll read you a quote real fast and then I'll shut up. But this is really an interesting quote, and it applies to all of us, and especially applies to you guys. Dwight Eisenhower, check this out. Politics ought to be the part-time profession of every citizen who would protect the rights and privileges of free people and who would preserve what is good and fruitful in our national heritage. How about that? Pretty cool. It's a bipartisan issue also, and what is more fruitful and important in our national heritage than water, for everybody. Farmers, forget it, man. We screw up the water. Where's the food coming from? That's a given. And, obviously tourist industry and drinking water, everything else. So that's pretty much the gist of what I have to say, but appreciate you guys listening and considering this when this resolution comes up. I think it's pretty important. So thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. You want to talk about that right now, or do you want to talk about that at the end of, because those are public comments?
Yeah, the topic is not on the agenda. So this is something that's been coming up for a couple months. I've been contacted by someone. And one of the things that Sheila recommended is that we consider a joint proclamation. So there's two different resolutions that are potential, and one of them is a clean water resolution that was originally drafted by Monroe County. And then Bayfield County took that and they worked with the Red Cliff community to do a joint proclamation between the two. And that is what is being recommended for Ashland County. So Dan has a meeting with the Bad River Tribal Council next week on April 6th. So we don't have this on our agenda as a draft resolution to present today because we're trying to work with the tribal community through a joint proclamation. But we wanted to make sure that there was interest from the community to bring this forward rather than just our department proposing it. So I don't know if we can actually talk about it because it's not an agenda item.
Well, we can
But
talk about it. We just can't do any action on it. That's why I'm asking you. You want to talk about this or do you want to wait till the next meeting? It doesn't bother me. one
I
way or
think
the
we would
other.
put it on the next agenda.
Okay.
I think under the climate change adaptation discussion, I think this would fit into that discussion.
Yeah, I think this, you got to remember, this committee is always concerned about our water and that. What you have is a lot of the rest of the counties and the communities and whatever, when we went to our manure management practices, they just said, well, you guys take care of it, Now, it's fun to see people come forward. We are so short of people who are really concerned. And what am I saying? Well, sometimes it takes voluntary work. Sometimes it just takes somebody to bring some of this stuff to us so that we can see it. I don't go around looking for trouble. I've got enough of it, but what I will tell you is back in the 90s, when I got on the county board, then Secretary Myers came from Madison. He was our DNR secretary, and he put together what we called a Lake Superior advisory team. And there was the same, this is 25 years ago. This concern hasn't ran away. So he put this together and we met and we were a 4-county LCC then. Now we've since then separated. But what happened there is says, everybody that's concerned about water, come to the table. So the initial 1 or 2 meetings, we had 40 of us. We had Murphy Oil, we had the tribes, we had the counties, we had citizen groups, you name it, we had it. By the 3rd and 4th meeting, we were down to about 15, and then we ended up with about 8 or 9. Those were the only concerned ones, and they were the counties, and they were the, people, but the rest of them said, and what we did, we didn't have legislative powers, but we suggested no more mercury in Lake Superior. And by golly, we got something passed in Madison. There's still mercury going in, but no more. So, how hard you're going to hit on this and how hard you're going to push. So those things have been crossed, and you talk about the manure. And of course, Mary Jo, put your fingers in your ears, Mary Jo. I've always said our farmers have done a fantastic job up here, most of them. We still got a handful that couldn't care less. But when you look at our big farms, like the Andersons and Kriskovich and they're knifing their manure into the ground. They're not spreading it on top of the ground. Jerry and I spread manure for 45 years we farmed. And we had nowhere to go with it. So we did build pits and we did haul it out in the summer and the spring, hopefully when it was cooler, so that we knew all that. We did it the best we had available. Now, these guys are knifing it in, they're irrigating this stuff in. You don't even smell it. It's 60, 70 degrees out, and they're knifing it in. You don't even smell it. You can drive by there and they're pumping out 10 million gallons and you don't even know it. So they're really trying. So anyway, anybody else got something they want to add? Jerry?
Yeah, I enjoyed the public comments, and we can't ever give up on preserving our water, and that is basically what we're all about. Because that's our most important resource we have. But it's not that any one person can do it. We all have to get the people educated so they work together towards the ultimate goal of having super good water to drink and healthy and so on and so forth. And it's on and on and on. But I do appreciate I call it a pep talk, and that's always needed, but we need it all the way through, all over, infiltrated through everybody. And how we do that, that's another issue, but we have to get together somehow to make it work. Thanks.
Well, I don't want to go on and on with this, but you start with your young people. Because your young people are the ones, if you teach them how to handle garbage and everything, you will get a lot of those will get hooked on and they will bring it into the next generation. A lot of our generations were there to make a living. So we done what we did. So, if you can't get it into the young people, it's not going to fly very well. We can't solve them problems. If everybody says, well, where's the money? Well, who's going to donate money so that we can clean up our water? And if the government don't do it, we're not going to have it.
George, has any other counties been interested in this?
John asked if any other counties have been interested in this. Are we going to talk about this later on in the agenda?
Just to answer that question, Bayfield County, in conjunction with the tribal council at Red Cliff, did pass a joint resolution, and we're looking at their model to show some solidarity. And when we get to the end of this meeting, I'll probably ask that this be put on the agenda for our next meeting.
Thank you.
Monroe County passed this resolution, John, in February of last year. And I know it's going around the state too. There are other counties, but I'm not sure at this point who else has passed this resolution.
Well, that's the question I was just going to ask, because you would think that Shawano County, those around the Fox River would be all jumping on this. Now, you and George were at the state conference. What was the jabber there? Was this a high priority? And my question would be, why not?
I in particular did not hear this talked about.
Let's see, let's keep going here. Oh, we gotta have a motion to approve the minutes.
So move, to say move.
George moves,
I second.
Jerry seconds. Any additions, corrections? Anybody got anything they want to add or take? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the
Aye.
same. Carried. Number 5, the approval of wildlife damage program, APHIS 2023 bear removal. I got one to remove already.
Oh.
You ready? Tearing my bird feeders down.
I'll talk about this agreement. This is
Well,
the,
let's get it on the floor first. I need a motion to put this on the floor. Jerry moves,
Second.
George seconds it. All right, go ahead.
this is the cooperative agreement for the actual bear trapping. So I enroll the farmers that are having crop damage. And then Wildlife Services takes over the actually placing of the traps and then maintaining of them, relocating the bear. And this is the contract that we pay them through. It all gets reimbursed through the DNR. Wildlife Services is asking for $1,515.76 this year. That's about $1,000 less than it was in 2022, so it went down. I want to say there were 3 producers in Ashland County that had a little bit of bear trapping go on last year. These numbers are the best estimate. I believe they can't go over this number, but it might be a little less than the actual number provided just based on how many people enroll. But once again, this is all reimbursed directly through the DNR.
Go ahead, Pat. I talked to a couple of the larger farmers in Ashland Bayfield County in the last year, and bears came up as part of the conversation. I didn't raise the question, but both of them expressed some frustration with the program being more hassle than it was worth, so to speak. And in particular, they thought the people providing this service had a harder time providing it for a variety of reasons than these farmers thought reasonable. So long story short, they thought, I'm just going to let the bear damage exist. So I don't know what the details are that we'd have to change to help more as far as farmers enrolling and overcoming those hurdles. It might be, as you talk to farmers, look for some input to see what could be, done better, or to help the contractors do better. Part of it's just related to size of like the UTVs they might use to go back into a field. And, it's sometimes stuff like that becomes a headache. The DNR last fall sent out a link asking if people knew where bear dens were. They're doing research on that. So it might be that some of these people know where some bear dens are or could help facilitate that. But then that raises the question in my mind, because we've got bear every year, the farm by Mason. It raises the question in my mind is, if the DNR is doing research on, the bear population and understanding their habits and stuff and feeding and stuff, what implications are there for moving bears that we might not understand, pros or cons with this? I really don't, know the answer very well to that. And then finally, one thing is I read the packet. I believe it's on the second page. The acronym WDACP was used, which is the Wildlife Damage Abatement Claims Program. I don't see in this document the words that tell us what that acronym stands for. So some of you that are experts and see this stuff all the time, you would recognize it. But for, let's say the public gets on the website, reads this packet and say, well, what is that? They wouldn't know. But if this is like a state form, you might want to let them know to put the words in there. So,
okay,
it always makes it more user-friendly for the non-expert.
I've definitely heard the same thing, to touch on like people not being super happy with the way the bear relocation services go. I think the main issue is that you have to allow public hunting. That's like the number one thing over and over again is on your land, and people, it's quite a hassle to maintain a hunter log, and then to allow hound hunters seem to be kind of the biggest concern with a lot of the farmers. Is the hounds run all over the farm and they're a little harder to control. It is the main issue I see. In order to change that, that's all at state level. That's not the program is set at the state level. And they're looking to change that. There's something called Act 82 that you can sign up for with deer and wildlife damage. And what that does is that allows you to have abatement help, but you're not allowed to make financial claims. So in the case of bear, is that would allow, and that eliminates the need for public hunting. If that was the case for bear, they could have trapping without having to allow the public to hunt, but they would not be able to make financial claims. That's something that the state has tried to pass the last couple of years, and it just has not gone through. I think that would go a pretty good way into allowing a lot of the bigger farmers to get into the program again. I think that's a very big thing for them, is that public hunting requirement. I hear that over and over again from people.
And the hunting with dogs in particular, because one of them, there's someone that's hunted with dogs my whole life out our way. And that whole thing with the dogs running, that is a serious issue. So if they could just, let them move it, no claim, I think that would, from what I have heard and seen, be supported by a lot of people.
Yep, agreed.
Any other comments?
Yeah, this is John Wiener. In Schwangen National Forest, as I've been understanding that they've been trying to eliminate dogs. And to me, that would be kind of a disaster because it's all it's going to do is do the amount of the animals. And so we need to keep the numbers down. So that was just my issue.
Anybody else? Well, we got a motion and a second on there to approve this contract. Any other comments, questions? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Go ahead.
Teresa, can you read back who made the motion and who seconded it, please?
Well, the motion was made to discuss the contract by Jerry Richardson, and then you seconded it.
Correct.
But that was not a motion to approve the contract.
Well, that
It was
was,
a motion to bring it to the table.
well, usually, okay. I mean, usually when you bring it on the floor, you're already approving it. And then you vote to pass it or not to. So now you need another motion. Okay, fine. Go ahead.
George Busset, move to approve the contract.
George made a motion, Jerry seconded to approve the contract. Any other discussions, comments? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, the same motion carried. Who's got the contract? You got it? Okay, I can do that at the end of the. All right, 2022 annual report.
Okay, we have an annual report from last year. This is actually on the desk over here. It did not get mailed in the packet. Krisha, would you be willing to pass out a copy of that to the members, please? And for those of you that are online, Laura, I did email you a copy of this morning, and then John, I can send a copy of this to you in the mail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the online, if you can see, Laura, if you can see the screen, I simply, to save time, I simply copied and pasted copies of the report. So the text is a little bit small there. So if you have the ability to read along from the copy that I emailed you, that would be more legible than what's going to show up on the screen. So this is a summary of basically all of our programs and projects and funding sources from 2022. I am going to have the staff jump in when we're talking about the programs that they administer. But on the front page of this report, it basically just lists all of our programs that are covered in the report and the associated pages that they're talked about on. And then the two photos there on the front represent just two practices of more than 36 different practices that we are able to work on with private landowners throughout Ashland County. Mike, who's our civil engineer technician, is primarily the staff person that works on these conservation practices. And we're able to supply landowners with cost sharing reimbursement, typically of 70%, but sometimes up to as much as 90% to implement conservation practices, which help reduce soil erosion, control nutrients, improve water quality, and or prevent non-point sources of pollution throughout Ashland County. The photos there on the front are a representation of livestock fencing and stream crossing. And all of the practices that we worked on last year, we'll see on page 6 of this report, and Mike will be talking about that. Okay, if you flip to page 2, I'm not going to read all of this, but if you focus in the center of the page, there's some highlights there in the boxes. And last year we were able to allocate just shy of $74,000 in cost share funding from the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, or DACAP. That's our main funder. And this was through conservation practices that landowners implemented and payments that were made for producers to develop nutrient management plans. We had 6 conservation practices installed. That's a little bit lower than our average. We typically have been averaging 8 or 9. But the year before we had more practices, and then we did have to carry over a project that a landowner was not able to implement by the end of last fall. So that one got moved on to this year's books. We received just shy of $134,000 from DACAP. Once again, the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, for our staffing grant. This is an annual non-competitive grant that we receive from the state to fund staff and support for the county. Every one of the 72 counties in the state receives a staffing grant from DACAP. And this is part of the Wisconsin statutes. It's required by law for DACAP to supply funding to counties to implement land and water conservation management plans. The way that the statute reads is the state is supposed to refund or reimburse the county 100% for the first position, 70% for a second position, and 50% for a third position. But the first positions are reimbursed 100% of the cost with no maximum. And so you can imagine that some counties in the state have very costly positions. And those positions do take up the majority of the funding that is available. So DACAP has never been able to fully fund that statutory obligation. Our parent association, the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association, has worked diligently for many years to try and increase the legislature allocation that goes to DACAP for staff funding. We did see about a $2 million increase last year, and we saw our own county increase here. This is more than 20,000 more than we've ever received from DACAP for staffing. We also have a bill that's proposed at the state legislature right now that will be advocating for full funding of this Chapter 92 to fully fund the staffing grants in the counties. And I will be speaking at a hearing in Minocqua on that at the end of April. So we'll see what happens for next year. And then the last box there is a little over $11,500 that we were able to allocate to landowners through our partnership with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. So some of our conservation practices that you'll see on page 6 had funding from NRCS, and we try to partner with them as much as possible to gain more cost-sharing dollars that are paid directly to landowners. So that money in that box represents what went to landowners from NRCS. At the bottom of page 2, it talks a little bit about our land and water management plan. This is the document that guides all of our work in the county. We're right in the middle of a 10-year work plan. And next year, we will be working on our work plan, which is part of that. The land and water plan directs a 10-year period, but our work plan runs for a 5-year period from 2020 to 2024. And next year, we will be working on updating that 5-year work plan to guide us from 2025 through the end of our land and water plan at 2029. Page 3 includes a budget summary. These are all of our funding sources that we received last year in 2022. At the top, it lists the revenues from each source and the expenses associated with those sources. And then at the bottom is simply a pie chart that shows the percent allocation from each of these funding sources that funded all programs through our department. The main source of funding we receive is from the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, DACAP. We receive a salary and staffing support grant. And we receive separate cost sharing funds. Those funds are the funds that we use to work with landowners on the 36 different conservation practices, and we're able to reimburse 70% cost sharing. The wildlife damage program is a 100% reimbursed program through the Department of Natural Resources. That program funds Matt Boland's position as a wildlife damage coordinator. He works on abatement measures and processing wildlife damage claims with farmers. And he coordinates this program in Ashland, Bayfield, and Iron County. Our nutrient management and farmland preservation program that provides opportunities for landowners to write nutrient management plans and to receive cost share for them, and then also to enroll in a farmland preservation agreement, which would give them tax incentives. Natural Resource Conservation Service, that's our federal partner that we work with cost sharing conservation practices on. Those payments go directly to landowners. They are not funneled through our department. The annual tree and shrub sale, this program has been going on for over 25 years. The details of this program are covered on page 9 of the report. But we typically sell around 11,000 trees. And the program is not designed as a fundraiser. It does generate revenue, but the main goal is to provide low-priced native plant stock for landowners throughout the region to be able to implement tree planting on their property. Miscellaneous revenue, that generates funds from permits, and also we charge our wildlife damage program, and we charge an agricultural grant for use of the county vehicle that we have in our department. So funds generated from those fees go into that account. Youth program donation, that's a line item on our tree and shrub sale where landowners are able to make donations directly to fund youth programs. This funds education events and things like our annual conservation poster and speaking contest for students. The no-till planter, that is a no-till drill that we rent out to landowners in Ashland County, Bayfield County, Douglas, and Iron. Typically that program breaks even. You see quite a large expense there from last year because there was deferred maintenance and damage on that machine that had been long overdue. So we had pretty much a complete overhaul on repairing many of the discs on that machine last year. Down at the bottom of that chart are the competitive grants. There's a number of new grants that we received last year. Many of those have been carried into this year because all of the projects that are listed under them were not all implemented in 2022. So you see the associated revenues and associated expenses tied to those grants. And if you have any specific questions, I can answer those individually. Yes.
So I'm looking at the top part of this page and there's a budget summary there. There's revenue and expenses. The expenses exceed the revenue. And then I'm looking at the lower part of the page with the pie chart and it says 2022, revenues and program costs. Are these, so I'm trying to sort through, are these the same information in two different
Yes.
ways?
Yes.
So,
Except the bottom actually should not read costs. The bottom, I notice, is simply the revenue.
okay.
So it represents the percent revenue from each of those funders.
So because the top half, the revenues and costs aren't the same. So if we took out the word cost, cross that out, then they should be the same. So I'm kind of going back and forth trying to figure out the language in the top half, how that corresponds to the language on the right there. And I realize on the right, there's less space to write, so some of it's condensed. Did you guys put this together or is it a software program?
No, I put this together.
So I'm trying to coordinate the stuff in the upper part with the lower part, and some of it I can figure out, and some of it just figuring out percent, kind of the size of the numbers and all these things must go together.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I-
the revenue column is what's used to generate the chart at the bottom.
Okay.
So the chart that you see at the bottom, like the blue, the big blue section, 29%, that's our DATCAP staff grant. So that represents 29% of the revenues that came in.
Okay, and then, would there be any way in that table on the upper half to put in a column with the colors to make it easier to go back and forth?
Yeah, I probably can do that.
Because
Or I can even just remove the pie chart at the bottom if that makes it too complicated. And just stick with the,
what'd be easier is, yeah, get rid of the pie, to me at least, get rid of the pie chart, partly because some of those colors look so similar, I can't hardly tell them apart.
Yeah.
But then maybe just another column that just said the percent, like a
Sure.
budget sheet, that this is, X%. And then I wouldn't have the confusion with the cost in the lower part. That would seem simpler.
okay,
Especially if people print them in black and white, which a lot of people do.
yeah. All right, page 4. This page highlights our natural flood management project in the Marengo River watershed. This is funded by Act 157, which many of you have heard about for several years. That was a funding allocation that was allocated to Ashland County from the Wisconsin legislature in 2020 to develop 2 to 3 natural flood management demonstration projects in the Marengo. That project has built considerable amount of momentum, and we've received additional funds for grant projects. And with that, it required the hiring of a project coordinator. So one of the grants that we received late in 2022 was a Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant, which was used to hire Seth Hackbarth, who is our Marengo River Watershed Project Coordinator. So Seth has been working for the past 6 months on helping to coordinate some of the projects that we are working on designing. And Seth, I don't know if you want to just mention the 3 projects down at the bottom that we have on the books for this year.
Yeah, so a couple of the projects we have coming up, we have a stream bed stabilization project. That'll be that picture up at the top with the proposed post-assisted log structures site. So that'll be implementing new and innovative tactics to kind of slow the flow of water, reduce sedimentation coming into the main stem of the Marengo River, and overall just helping out water quality and stabilizing the soil we have on the ground and in the streams. So that'll be the most upstream part on the purple section of the Marengo Valley NFM plan. We also have a proposed project for enlarging a culvert and restoring a stream in that middle red section. So the idea there is overall just creating capacity to store water and help slow the flow as well. And then the lowest orange section has a wetland restoration aspect to it, creating scrapes and managing flood pulses through that area. And we also have a couple projects that we're going to be scoping out later in this field season to once again another culvert or a couple culverts and wetland restoration projects to scope out, and hopefully we can have those shovel ready for the future.
Thanks, Seth. Those future projects would be represented in the yellow and orange areas on the map. And so basically this demonstration project would utilize a combination of on-farm, in-stream, and wetland conservation practices to help restore hydrologic stream functions in this area of the Marengo and to reduce erosion hazards in these headwater areas of the watershed. This area of the Marengo was heavily impacted during the 2016 and 2018 flood events. And data is showing us that increased precipitation will continue to affect this region well into the future. So that's why we are focusing on these natural flood management projects to try to help mitigate some of those future erosion hazards. If you look on page 5, this page highlights 2 new programs that we started last year. We started a landowner well testing program and a water quality monitoring program in the Marengo River. And Seth, do you want to just quickly talk about both of those?
So the well testing program happened early last year in the spring. That was in coordination with UW Stevens Point. Kevin Masaryk was able to come up after the testing was done and the analysis was complete and give landowners a good presentation about what the tests mean for their water quality at each of their individual wells. As you can see, Ashland County was able to cover a great portion of the costs for the landowners, which most of these landowners might not even know that you should test your wells or that you can test your wells, and to be able to help them financially was also a big part of the project. As you can see, there's a lot of different things tested for their metals package was one of them, and then the homeowners package was another. That'll be in that third paragraph there, all of the aspects listed. And we also did a PFAS test. One landowner was interested in doing that, so we worked with a separate lab down in Madison to be able to help him locate a lab. He did have to pay for all of that out of pocket, but just being able to assist in getting the sample out and done was part of that project as well. And the Marengo River water quality monitoring has been in coordination with the USGS. We're still planning on doing that into the future. I believe USGS has a 3 to 5 year plan that they're working on to continue that. And this all started back in 2021 with the sampling. All of those samples are sent down to UW Stevens Point and processed, as well as some E. coli samples that get sent over to Northland College locally. We also have a water quality sonde that we use in the field to grab parameters the day of the test so that we can get temperature, pH, turbidity, and stuff like that recorded right away. Are there any questions about water quality stuff?
You know, kind of looking out to the future a bit, the city of Ashland gets their water from Lake Superior, and they're just putting money into extending a pipe that was damaged, you know, like 60 years ago. But then with the PFAS testing, you know, they did some testing recently and the test showed that it was, you know, safe, whatever that means, but, you know, any of it at all is, you know, likely too much. Then there's pharmaceuticals that get in the water and they recirculate, and this bay kind of rotates. So the discharge from the treatment plant, you know, that water goes out into the lake, but then this stuff sort of circulates and mixes. So, you know, the old what goes, you know, goes around comes around sort of thing with our water supply here. And then there's microplastics. So what I'm thinking about, you know, looking ahead maybe decades here is I can see the city getting to a point where they would rather have well water. And I know 20, 30 years ago, they drilled some test wells and they decided that the wells would not be sufficient to supply the city, or at least it'd be more costly. But I'm just kind of wondering if in time, as far as long-term planning, with, you know, particularly with water, if we're not going to see a move of people wanting to live where they can have their own well because they don't want to have the city of Ashland water because of what's in the lake. And I don't know, you know, where it's going to go, but I can see these things, you know, coming. We get our drinking water from the artesian well up in Maslowski Beach. You know, just because I've seen enough of the reports out of Public Works, I don't want what's in the water, even if it's small amounts. I'd rather have the well water. And so when we talk about water, I think if this lake becomes more challenging to get water that people are comfortable drinking, that may have an impact on people that want to move out of Ashland, and then all of those effects that go with, you know, land getting carved up into 5-acre plots and all of those consequences. So, you know, I'm guessing you're focused more on the water outside the city of Ashland,
but it might be all these impacts in Lake Superior are going to have a big effect on where people choose to live, you know, near the lake shore, whether it's in Ashland or outside.
And the main reason why we've started this type of monitoring, we know very little about the quality of groundwater in Ashland County and the quality of wells. So this is an opportunity for us to get some baseline information. The program last year, we focused on landowners that are in the proposed Line 5 reroute. So if that pipe ever goes in there, at least we have some baseline information on the current quality of these wells before any big land use changes occur. And then the focus of our program for this year is the broader Marengo watershed, but still keeping a focus area to try and concentrate the number of samples that we can receive. Once again, to start gaining some baseline information and building knowledge of what our current groundwater conditions are. Because there are a number of samples that have been done throughout the county, but they're spread all around the county. So it's hard to get a good knowledge of what the quality is by region. And then similar with the water quality monitoring on the Marengo, it gives us an opportunity to gain some baseline information of what's going on throughout the watershed and the opportunity to have data to make future comparisons if we notice that there's changes going on. Okay, we're gonna move
Mary
on
Jo?
to page 6. Yes.
You know, we've had people testing for 15 years now. So have we a schedule on that? Do we know what has happened over the last 15 years? Because, you know, the last 20 years, the cattle basically came off of the rivers. We've got nobody that's got cattle on the rivers anymore. So you see them tests, you don't see them, where do they go?
No. I know that Bad River does their own testing and that data is kept by them.
But would they test at them same 4?
No,
See, they're only testing down by the, you know, my question really is if you look at the Altman Road and the Ashland Bayfield County, if we have a criteria where we say, well, this is what comes down to the county line road, this is how much more pollution is,
Mhm.
do we have that?
we've only been testing there for 2 years now. So
Well, my question is.
not
stands
15 years.
Pretty firm, you know, when we started this, the people came out in groves to test. They were testing everywhere. But the DNR would not support that because they weren't taught or trained by the DNR.
Hmm.
And so my point still stands is, do we know what we're talking about pathogens? Do we know, you know, are we following through as to say, is it, you know, because you have been to the, and I don't know that they talked about it this year, but you were here about 6, 7, 8 years ago. The Fox River was a big one, and that still is a big one that they really, a lot of algae and a lot of that. And they sent out, what is 220 questionnaire or 800, I think, 800 sample bottles to have people test, you know, send in a sample. They only had 200 of them send them back. And of them, there was 33, if I remember the numbers, 33 of them had animal waste in it. 22 of them had human waste in it. So you didn't hear about it no more because there was human waste in it. And this is what we keep going at this, the Marengo. You know, when we started this back in about 2000, nobody wanted this. And I said, let's do the Marengo. So we get a lot of things that are associated to the Marengo River shed. And this is a big one, you know, where is the, you know, they're saying, well, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. We don't have nothing to prove that.
Yeah, that's part of why we are doing this monitoring. And in 2016, the DNR did list the Marengo as paired for fecal coliform. Fecal coliform comes from feces. And so we are curious about what is that feces coming from? So one of the things that Seth did last year that is listed in this report is we collected E. coli samples on the Marengo and we had them DNA tested. And it came back that there is human and livestock waste present. The numbers are low enough right now that they don't jeopardize the federal standards, but they are present. Now, trying to determine where those are coming from is going to take extensive research because there's multiple tributaries and sections that are feeding into the Marengo. So we would have to get down to a very, very small scale of testing sites in the Marengo. And we're not exactly sure how we're going to be able to do that yet. But we're trying to learn more information and we're going to keep monitoring. So this program will grow over time.
Yeah, because when I remember one of the breakout sessions I went to a few years ago, and they had where they have down by the, by Green Bay in there, they got a lot of shale, they got a lot of shale rock, and this manure has been moving through there through the top aquifer. And so they went to DNA testing, and there's some of that manure come 3 miles through the ground. It was just astonishing, really. And so the people sued these farmers, and so the insurance company said, sure, we'll pay it. And then they just tacked on a $50,000 rider to the farmers. It's a big merry-go-round, but it's all right. Good thing.
Okay, page 6 covers our cost share conservation practices from last year. And Mike is the expert here, so I'm going to let him share that information.
Yeah, we'll start out with top one with Kenny Richardson. And you will notice that we did piggyback with NRCS, which back in the day, we did, I would say 98 to almost 100% piggybacking. And the reason for that change, Paul Johnson, the technician, retired 3 years ago, and they just replaced him. I think Todd started less than a year ago, and then Gary Hahn retired. So they did have some change of guard there, but we did just meet with Mike, who is the new DC there, and we got together with him the other day, and I think we're going to be back on board with piggybacking soon. And like I say, it didn't totally go away, but it's gone downhill since the earlier days. And part of that too is we used to share an office, and now they're just across town, but it makes a big difference if you got to jump in a car or walk 50 feet down the hall to talk to someone. But anyways, I think in the future, we will start piggybacking with our projects more often again, because it was always a priority with our committee to do so, and I know it still is, and we're doing our best to keep on piggybacking. So anyways, the first one there was we piggybacked on the crossing. The fencing was just DATCAP funding. And then on the second one, it was a Kleinstaber, Bruce. We did cost sharing again with NRCS to piggyback, so that we were able to get more done with that one. The third one was a well decommissioning. I'm not certain that NRCS even does the well decommissioning, and it's a pretty small dollar figure, so it's not a big deal that we do our own. And that's we've been trying to get at least a couple each year, and we did have another one on the docket last year, and the well driller couldn't get at it, so that one did not go in, but we hope to finish that one this year in 2023. Then moving down, the next one was Robert Reamer. He had a livestock watering facility, which actually is my typo. There was 2 of them actually, not 1. And we put in heavy use protection there. It made a world of difference. The cattle were about up to their bellies in mud, and he's just on the north shore of the Maringo River, the main river. So that project really turned out really nice. And Bob put in fencing as well. We didn't cost share on that, but we did on the heavy use protection. And again, NRCS did not piggyback on that one. And then the last one was Mark Joma, Access Road. He's a beef farmer out on Government Road. And we've been continuing to work with Mark. He's probably, between him and probably Reamer, probably two of the folks that we work with the most. I think mainly they've both really showed interest in the program. So we continue. I believe we'll have we do have another project with Mark again this year, not with Robert, I don't believe, but that might come up yet too. So anybody got any questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Mike, to what extent does NRCS have other projects in which we're not involved? Just a rough estimate, give me a general picture of to what extent they're engaged in these kind of projects that we're not directly in partnering with.
As far as dollar amount or what?
Maybe a couple parameters, do they work with a lot of people, a lot of different properties, or do they work with just a few? What kind of projects do they work on? And to what extent is their realm different than that of the county department?
They work on exactly the same projects we do. There's just been a lack of coordination since we lost Paul Johnson and then Gary Hahn in retirement. I don't know how else to word it, but kind of shut it down the last year so that he could catch up with, he didn't want any new projects. So we lost over a year right there. Just, like you said, didn't want to do new projects. I can't put it any more simple. So now with the new DC and a new technician, we'll have to get back together. But we do exactly the same projects. That's why it's always worked so well to piggyback. And they always took the lead, and then we came in and did the 70% of what they couldn't cost share on, or the money that they wouldn't cost share on, or the leftover, I should say. So it's worked out really well for the landowner and us. We're getting 2 projects done and only one person's doing the design. So say Paul and I used to sit down and let's say there was 10 projects. I'd take 5 and Paul would take 5. And now we've, the last about 2 years, again, 3 years, because Paul's been gone. I just been doing my own, and I have no idea who did their projects. I think someone out of Spooner, Dave Jorgensen, I think.
So DC stands for District Conservationist. I guess.
Correct.
And so to what extent do our land areas overlap with the jurisdiction of the NRCS office here in Ashland, overlapping with our responsibility?
It's again the same. We only take care of Ashland County. They do Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, and Iron.
But their funding is allocated by county, right? Like they get equip signups for Ashland County, equip signups for Bayfield County.
Right, and they've got a ranking system.
Yeah. So their funding is a lot more competitive for the landowners than ours are. They have more stringent eligibility requirements. There has to be resource degradation, pollution on site. Our program can also allow us to work with landowners where maybe there's no necessarily not any current pollution, but we would be preventing. So we can do more preventative measures where they have to strictly improve current degradation. But it does serve the landowner best when we can partner together. Because like Mike said, they'll reimburse 90%. And then we come in and cost share 70% of that remaining 10%. And this could make a big deal for some producers that really do not have a lot of financial resources. And like he also mentioned, it helps share the workload. So their agency and our agency are getting double the work done, but doing 50% of the design. So it's a fantastic partnership, and our staff just sat down with a new district conservationist last week. He came over to our office. He was there for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
We had a great discussion. He's excited to get on board and work as a team. But like Mike said, we just have to rebuild that partnership now because there's been retirements there.
And a correction, they will do up to 90% if there's hardship. They typically do 50% cost share. And then we come in and take 70% of what's remaining, and that's what we would cost share on. That's what we've done since, well, for 22 years. Yeah.
Last summer, I had a wetland restoration project done out at the farm. Mike, you were out there at one time. And so NRCS was involved with that. And so what you said about Paul retiring, they are rebuilding that. And I had Paul out for some other things a few years earlier. So I think Todd and the new DC, they're definitely seem like they're good at rebuilding those relationships and coordinating. So, and then this year, it looks like they have some funding to do some boundary around that for vegetation and stuff, which will, help protect that wetland that just got done. But I think we also should include Fish and Wildlife Service in this because they partnered on the project last year with that wetland restoration. So
Certainly, yeah, we do very few wetlands, but yes, if we do a wetland, and our Fish and Wildlife is involved, but that's the only projects typically that we do with Fish and Wildlife.
yeah, and then just looking at the Marengo watershed, certainly wetland restoration is going to be a priority there. And then as we look at the climate change task force, if we parallel Monroe County, they have a strong focus on wetland restoration too. So certainly Fish and Wildlife. And then the Farm Bill, I think, is going to have impact on the projects that get funded. There's going to be more that would fund projects that I think we're interested in related to the climate change task force, the Marengo watershed, et cetera. So it depends on what's in that Farm Bill. And I think that's going to support a lot of projects of interest up here. So it would be good for people that have some land that they're interested in doing something with to contact the different offices that help provide funding for these projects.
Right, and Mike assured us that he will let the landowners know to come talk to us, not making any promises, but that they would, they have the ability to possibly get more cost sharing money.
Mike, the new district conservationist, was invited to this meeting, but he had another meeting out of town today. So he will be on our agendas as a agency representative for future meetings. Because in the past, Gary Hahn, who was the previous conservationist, he would attend these meetings regularly when he was available and he would give reports. So we'll continue with that in the future. Okay, thanks, Mike. Moving on to page 7, the next couple of pages focus on 2 grants that we have through the Wisconsin DNR. We have a lake monitoring protection network and a Clean Boats, Clean Waters grant, and page 7 shows the amount that we receive from the state. The Lake Monitoring Protection Network is an allocation that the state determines for each county based on a number of factors, the number of lakes that you have, your population. There's all sorts of factors that are run into an equation. So that is a non-competitive grant that we will be receiving annually now to allocate certain programs associated with that program. And then the Clean Boats, Clean Waters Award is similar. We do have to apply for it, but it's basically non-competitive. We submit our application and we've received the funding. So these programs are administered by Scott. And if you look on page 8, and we'll try to compete with the heating system here. So Scott, you're gonna have to speak up. But Scott can highlight just a few of the things from page 8 that were key items from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see there, we've got all the programs listed there. We always try to, just like in years past, we always try to make it a very multifaceted invasive species program. So we want to not only have just education or just monitoring or just control or just coordination, but we really want to have that multifaceted approach where we do some of all of that. Kind of lead by example by doing monitoring and control work, teaming up with other folks to do education. And we also host our own educational outreach events and attend a lot of other events as well. And then coordinating with other partners. We're very fortunate in Northern Wisconsin that we do have a lot of other partners that we can team up with on invasive species work. We absolutely really appreciate their efforts and kind of jump at the chance to partner up with them wherever it's appropriate. So listed there, we've got our educational programs listed first. So I probably won't read off every single one, but as you can see, we work with folks that actually live on lakes through our Citizen Lake Monitoring Program. We also do a lot of try to balance out the water bodies that we're working on. So we do a lot of monitoring on inland lakes. We also do a lot of monitoring and control work on Lake Superior, and then also the riverine early detectors that's listed in the first bullet point. That would focus more on rivers, streams, and creeks. So we obviously focused on a Great Lake, Lake Superior, and inland lakes, but we also definitely don't want to forget about our rivers, streams, creeks, and then also I'll throw in their wetlands as well. So really try to making sure that it's, again, that multifaceted approach. And then kind of going down the list, a lot of those, as you can see, are very education focused. So things like our purple loosestrife biocontrol and landing blitz, drain campaign, bait dealer initiative, waterfall campaign, all kinds of stuff that targets a wide variety of invasive species stakeholders. So anyone from boaters and anglers, trappers, folks that are into paddling, bird watchers, you name it, we're trying to target those folks. And then also hitting them at a lot of different areas as well. So, could be at schools or colleges or huge partners of ours. We're getting more and more involved with like lake associations as well. So again, just hitting them, all different kinds of stakeholder groups there. As far as our control work, we do control, and we typically, whenever it's possible and appropriate, we always try to team up with a lot of our other invasive species partners in the area. So the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, Bad River Tribe, and then the Northwoods Cooperative Weed Management Area are kind of our top three partners with regards to our invasive species control. So I always team up with them whenever possible. Clean Boats, Clean Waters. So that's another kind of a staple of our invasive species program. Every year we apply for Clean Boats, Clean Waters funding through the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. We get typically about $4,000, and then we also have about $1,300 in match that we provide. So that funds, it's a big, I wouldn't say entirely funds, but a big portion of the pot of money that would fund our summer help. So we've always called them aquatic invasive species interns in years past. This year we kind of rebranded a little bit, and we're calling them conservation technicians. So if you see that, that's kind of the new title that they're gonna go under. Kind of made that little tweak just because they help us out with not just our invasive work, but also sometimes they'll help Matt out with wildlife damage or help Seth out with water quality, send them with Mike to learn about conservation projects as well. So that's kind of why we made the slight tweak there. For our aquatic invasive species monitoring, you see all of our kind of the data from 2022. So again, we do a lot of monitoring on Lake Superior, our inland lakes, as well as some of our flowing waters, rivers and streams and creeks and wetlands. So you got the data there, locations that we monitored, and then also what was discovered. Fortunately, just like in years past, knock on wood, we still do not have any Eurasian water milfoil or curly leaf pondweed in inland waters in Ashland County. So that's something that I think we can really hang our hats on. We are one of the very few counties that can say that. So hopefully that will remain the case. So and I think that's again kind of very much due to the monitoring, the control, educations, partnerships, and hopefully we can keep it that way. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's kind of it for the invasive species stuff that I wanted to chat about. If there's any questions, happy to take those. Otherwise, we can move on to tree and shrub.
Out in Prentice Park in particular, there's a lot of fish lines, hooks, whatever. So you got clean boats, clean waters. And I've really become aware in recent years just how many, birds and other things get caught on fishing lines and hooks that are left. And I don't know if there's anything you can do to try to educate the public about that issue. And, it seems like a lot of people just leave this stuff. And I don't know if there's any equipment or tools or techniques to try to, when someone gets a snag, if they can try to remove more of that. But someone that I know has become quite interested in birding the last few years, and that's raised the awareness of how often those things are caught in wildlife. A couple of years ago, and a gosling was having trouble near shore. I went out and got it, and it was all tangled up. It would have died. And so some of that stuff is, I don't know if there's anything we can do to reduce that, but it seems like a lot of people leave that stuff thinking, oh, it's not going to hurt anything, but not quite the case, not to mention the plastic in the water.
Yeah, that's a great point, Pat. Thanks for bringing that up. We do have on our inland lakes, and then all of our major Lake Superior landings, there is basically it's kind of like basically it's a PVC pipe that's kind of hollowed out, and then folks can put waste, fishing line and hooks and that kind of stuff in that little receptacle. There is not one at Prentice Park to my knowledge, but that's something that I can definitely look into. I know they're real inexpensive to make. And then there's also a little sign that goes along with it that just basically instructs anglers to any discarded line to roll it up and just kind of toss it in there. So that's a great point to add one of those.
So I haven't fished in many years, but I get the impression, this is just an impression, a lot of times when people get a snag, they like, okay, I'm going to break the line, or I'm just going to cut it where my boat is sitting. Do they encourage anglers to say, okay, if I can't get this thing out of, Prentice Park's, he gets lots of snags. Well, at least I'm going to go as close to where it's snagged as I can, and then cut that line as short as I can to minimize the risk of, birds in particular getting caught in that line, just to reduce the amount of line.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I don't know if like Wisconsin DNR would have any sort of recommendation like that. I mean, obviously folks there's a lot of snags, and I'm sure most of them, especially folks fishing from shore, I think they do, just kind of break it off wherever it breaks. But that's a great point that, I mean, there really should be some sort of education to try to eliminate as much of that fishing line as possible. Mike, go ahead.
Pat, what works is folks have been using weaker hook so that when you start pulling on it, the hook actually bends. A lot of people have gone to that, and that's saved, well, myself included, it saved a lot of lost line, and eventually the hook breaks, but the line is back in your boat. So that's what has happened. Oh, I'd say it's been going on for about 10 years now that I've been doing it.
Okay. Thanks, Scott. Moving on to page 9, this covers our tree and shrub sale and our Adopt a Highway program. So we've been running a tree and shrub sale since 1993. We've sold well over 250,000 trees and shrubs. And we do highlight plants now that are more suitable for climate change. So we are really encouraging landowners to plant species that will be suitable when they come to full maturity in the next 50 to 60 years. We do know that some of our boreal species, our firs, are going to be could be heavily impacted by a changing climate. So we try to educate landowners about species that will be more suitable. In the middle of the page there, that lists kind of the facts from last year's sale. We had almost 200 people order, which was a huge year. About 13,500 trees and shrubs we were dealt with. And we paid a lot of scholarships out to students who participated in our poster contest. And then we also started an Adopt a Highway program. So we pick up trash twice a year, usually on Earth Day and then once in October. And that goes from, we're going down Sanborn Avenue. So pretty much right at the corner of 6th Street, south on Sanborn, past the vet clinic, down to Weister Road. So if you're ever on Sanborn, watch for our sign there. You see a picture of it in the bottom right corner. And that's something that we do to help keep the highways clean. And it's conducive to our program and our work. And then we usually will do like a meal as a staff kind of after to help celebrate. And we try to make it fun. We've found some pretty unique items in the past couple years. So picking up trash isn't always the most exciting thing, but we've made it pretty fun as a staff with some particular clothing items that we found last year. And large screen television. So it's always interesting. Okay, and then on page 10, this highlights our annual conservation poster contest. Scott does a great job of coordinating that program for us. He works with a number of schools. The theme rotates every year, and this is a program that's run through our state association, Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association, and then we administer it at the local county level. So we have all the posters there that were the age group winners in Ashland County. And Scott, I don't know if you want to say anything about that program at all?
Yeah, I mean, just a couple comments. I think this is a great way for our department to kind of get in the schools, work with, whether it be science teachers, art teachers, K-5 teachers. It's just been really neat to see how this poster contest and the speaking contest has grown through the years. Wonderful way to make those connections there. And yeah, it's just been a really, really neat program. And I love to see kind of how it's grown, not just in numbers, but also participation in schools. It's not just a, school district of Ashland participates. We're getting a lot of buy-in from Our Lady of the Lake. And this year we had a ton of posters come in from Mellon, a lot of posters from Butternut. We get a lot of homeschool students. So it's just really neat to see how that program has really taken off. And I'll also say that about the ages of the students that are submitting posters. So it's not just, elementary students or middle school students, high school students, et cetera. It's really that kind of a balance. And I think that's just so important to have that, kind of that balance, or that, just getting a lot of different ages and schools involved in that. So, and kind of keep these numbers in mind. I'll talk about that, just kind of how it's grown within the years. And I think we're hopefully just getting started, and we'll continue to grow this program more and more in the future. So more on that when I talk about my staff report.
Thank you.
I need to make a comment on that. For forever, we've gotten 10, 20 posters. This year, I think we had over 100?
161.
So, I don't know, what's the, are the teachers just listening? Are they, what do you hear out there?
Yeah, great question. One thing we do is I think a big thing was we do offer a little bit more incentive for the teachers. So we do, we started basically some of the money that is listed on the tree and shrub donation, and we put a little section there for youth education. I think that's been absolutely critical to have that line on there. I think that kind of gives a little extra incentive for a lot of the teachers because they are spending a lot of time in this. So a good example would be the school district of Ashland. They participated. We gave them kind of a small stipend, and all of the students that submitted posters along with the teachers, they had a big pancake feed after that for all the folks that participated. I know Mellon is doing something similar there. I believe they're doing more like a pizza party type of deal. So just rewarding students as well as the teachers for their efforts. We are still offering the individual awards for the students as well. So we offer, kind of a small cash stipend if they place at the county contest and or the area contest. And then there's additional prizes. So I think that kind of gets them motivated as well. And then also just trying to get into the schools as much as possible, kind of work with the teachers there and really develop those relationships. And I think one last point to point out about that, I think once you get your foot in the door with, teacher A or teacher B, it seems like once you get them on board, they stay on board, which I think is just kind of took a little bit of time to kind of get the ball rolling on that. But I think we have the connections. So I'm really already looking forward to next year's contest. So
I think we got to say that Scott's doing a heck of a job, but I also think all the negative things that came from our pandemic, which I guess we're not all the way out of it, but pretty much, I think it's changed the people's values. Their values are more focused towards family and more of the simple. I don't mean simple. But it's the more important things like the water and the soil and stuff like the conservation program does, and it shows up in that poster. And I think it's built up a lot of enthusiasm with the people. So I think in a positive way.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, if you don't get these younger people and all of a sudden we got I hope it's not just the COVID. I hope that some of these teachers, we've gone here and tried that time and time again. And this, they say, well, that's not my criteria. That's not, I'm too busy doing everything else, and that's fine and dandy. The other thing I want to say is in the 30 years I've been on this committee, we had 3 years in a row, we had one person with a speech. Last fall or this spring, we had 2. So, well, all of a sudden we got 2 people that had speeches, and we didn't get anybody at the state level that qualified on the poster, did we? No, okay.
Oh, yeah, we actually, this report is from last year.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
these are accomplishments last year. Now, we did already have our poster contest for 2023. Scott's going to give you the highlights from that when we get down to staff reports later on in the agenda. I don't even have that on the agenda. Sorry about that.
Well,
So we will be giving staff reports. We'll cover that under other business. So he'll give you the updates from this year's program.
all right, go ahead.
Okay, we'll finish up here real quick. Page 11 and page 12 talk about all of our farm programs. So nutrient management, farmland preservation, wildlife damage, and our no-till. And Matt is going to talk about some of this. He's our wildlife damage coordinator and our ag technician. And so Matt, I'll let you give some of the highlights from these things.
Sure. So I'll start with the nutrient management planning. Is that one? It's what I do is I sit down with individual farmers that decide that they want to actually get their nutrient management plan done. They take soil samples. And once they have the data back, I will sit down with them and I'll go over uploading it into this program. We'll plan out what exactly they've got, what they want to spread for fertilizer, what they've got for manure, what fields are best to use those on to make sure they're not over or under applying. and sitting down, one-on-one with a lot of these guys to do it. There are 25 producers in Ashland County that have nutrient management plans that cover just over 11,000 acres, which is about 21% of our farmland. Hopefully year over year that continues to increase. It'd be nice to have all of it covered. I believe there were 3 brand new plans written in Ashland County this year, and there were 3 or 4 that were updated, which of the ones that I worked on, Ashland County by far had the most volume of people to have their plans worked on. This computer program is a bit of a challenging one. And so I spent this whole first year of employment kind of learning it and sitting down and working out the kinks with it. And I think I am in a pretty good spot. It's kind of amazing. Even as I'm sitting down, I wrote one in Douglas County like 2 weeks ago, and I'm still learning new tips and tricks. I don't think anybody will ever figure it out. I think even the developers still find out new stuff. But that's all been good. I'm hoping to put together a few mailers to go out to encourage more people to sign up for nutrient management planning. We did a field day in Douglas County last year where we focused on and talked about nutrient management planning, and that really got people to actually sign up. I do sit down and talk with quite a few people about planning. It's one thing to talk about. It's another thing to get people to actually pull the soil samples and write the plans. So hopefully going forward, we'll get some more involvement. Piggybacking with that with Farmland Preservation Program that's a program where farmers can enroll their lands and they will guarantee that they will keep their lands in farm production for 15 years. And what they receive is a tax credit at the end of the year. And so if they use the incentive program to write a nutrient management plan, topple that or add that to the tax credit that they'll get with farmland preservation, that's a pretty good carrot to try to get people to sign up. There was one new agreement in Ashland County in 2022. And hopefully that gets increased going forward. That is for the nutrient management planning and farmland preservation. As I do that for the northern 4 counties, Douglas, Bayfield, Ashland, and Iron. The ones I talked about were just for Ashland County. Before I go on to wildlife damage, anybody have any questions about those 2?
You know, for a future agenda, I'd really like to delve into the topic of getting those plans written, because we've talked and I've got some farmland. It's not in the nutrient management plan. I have it rented out. And so there's just a whole bunch of questions and challenges and things to work through to get there when you're leasing that land out. And I think if we had this on an agenda, it would help maybe to understand how to get more people to sign up, myself included. And then there was an article, I think it was the Daily Press, but recently, but with the Wisconsin legislature right now, we've got agricultural enterprise zones in Ashland, Bayfield County, including where I'm at. And what they're proposing right now for incentives on this, if I have a nutrient management plan and a conservation plan, well, that money would come to half of what I'm getting for rent. So I'm thinking, I don't need the money to keep the land, but I'm thinking from an economic development standpoint, I'm thinking from helping people to keep their land so they can pay their taxes, that if we could address some of these hurdles for, I think, a lot of landowners who are renting their land out, we might, get more people in the plans, which is good for the environment, but it's good for the economy and people hanging on to their land so it doesn't get cut up and developed and that sort of stuff. But I'd really like to have this on an agenda and go through things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Matt, could you just take a few seconds, say a few words about the picture of the truck spreading the manure and how you advise on techniques for manure spreading?
Yeah, so that picture, I did not put that picture on there. When it comes to actual manure spreading, when we sit down and talk one-on-one with individual farmers, everyone's going to be different how they do it. They essentially give me what the volume of manure they've got is, and then we figure out what fields to spread on where they need it. And that's all. The computer program itself is helping put those numbers together for actually how to spread the manure. I believe the program does account for the different nutrient uptake based on how it's actually spread, whether it's worked in or just surface spread. And so, yeah, that's all computer program. What this program does is it will like show where not to spread in the winter. It'll show restricted areas where not to spread, closer to wells, closer to water. That's primarily what the program does, is it generates, number one, what the nutrients are going to be from that manure. And then where they should not be spreading is what the plan shows.
Have we had any complaints from neighbors about air quality as a result of spreading?
I believe there was a complaint that there was like a public comment last year at some time where someone was talking about it. I was involved with that a little bit, but that's, as of right now, that's about the only one I know about. There's I would like to do like a field day and demonstrate these manure injectors where it puts it right below the ground, and that reduces the smell an awful lot. They're expensive, they're heavy, they're hard to move around roads and whatnot. So there's a lot involved with it. But as far as I'm aware, there was like one complaint last year with smell.
Yeah, that was Linda that came in and gave public comment, and her complaint was related to field runoff, rain runoff. Not so much the odor. I have heard people just in general that complain about odor, but we've never had any formal complaints, or we've never had any comments made at our meetings about odor. So.
Mr. Chairman? Yeah, the trend is more like George talked about previously at the meeting, that they're knifing it in. That particular picture, it's not being knifed in. It's spread on a sod field, which is good. It's not wet ground or anything like that, but the knifing in is it appears that the majority of the farmers out through my area are going that way more.
So this photo is kind of how a traditional spreading application. When we first started writing nutrient management plans, what we would do is we would go out to the farm and we would actually weigh the manure spreader loaded. And we would calculate the number of either solid manure or liquid manure gallons. And you would take the gallons times the weight of the machine. And then we physically would go and measure how wide the spread of distribution is. And we would use all of those to factor in how much manure was physically being spread on the fields. And I think what Matt is mentioning now is that is calculated into the computer software. This was in 2009 when I first started writing plans. So in 14 years, I hope that the technology has made some advances, so we're not going out and measuring manure on every farm field, because frankly, it's not the nicest job. But anyways, yeah, so this kind of shows just the spreading of manure in one manner, but there's a number of different ways to spread and to incorporate based on the equipment that the farmer owns and the type of manure that they're spreading.
Alrighty, I will continue on to the wildlife damage side of things. Is kind of already lightly talked about it, and I'll touch on it more on my staff report too. Is that, yeah, farmers they reach out to me and they enroll in the program if they're having damage to crops or stored feed. I don't really do anything with, like, if there's a big one this winter was like turkeys have been a big problem. If there's any mortalities caused by turkeys to like cattle, is I don't deal with that. That's more the federal government. Mine is just stored feed. There's been quite a bit of that with silage, turkeys and silage. And then this winter there's been quite a bit of damage from elk to hay bales. And that's been taking up a decent amount of time throughout the year. Yeah, throughout the year there was in the fall, early part of the fall, it's a good bit of bear work. Initially, right when I started, there was a good bit of elk and turkey damage. These farmers when they're having the damage, they call me and I help put together a plan with them within the guidelines of the program on how best to prevent damage going into the future. And then ultimately, if they have enough damage for a claim, which would be over $500, there's a $500 deductible. So if they have $1,000 in damage, they would get paid out $500. And I would do appraisals for that and just try to help out in any way I can and prevent damage going forward. That's part of why I talked with some of the drone work and some of the lower numbers we had on bear claims this year. Is I think we caught bear quite effectively this year and prevented a good bit of damage. An early acorn drop helped a little bit, or a good bit. And a good year for apples helped keep that low as well. And like I said, I'll touch more on some of that in my staff report. In 2022, there were 7 enrollments in Ashland County. There were 2 claims. There were $6,335 paid out in claims. And then as far as abatement measures go, there was $5,183 spent on those measures. That's a similar budget to what we've got in 2023. And I'll touch on that going forward, as we've already spent most of that for 2023 with a lot of the elk damage from this winter already. But like I said, I'll touch on that in my staff report a little more. Anybody have any questions on wildlife damage?
I got a comment, maybe a question. How about round bales and that, do we pay on them? Deer damage?
On deer, like deer elk damage?
Well, where the elk is probably down. I know there's elk behind our place right now, and I've told Tim to go and check, but he's got cattle out there. And I'm sure they're out there eating, but they're not gonna eat that much. The question is I went past Adam Lindquist's place, and he's got, about 100 yards of round bales, and there had to be 20 deer, and they had holes cut in there, and it looked like cattle in a barn. I mean, they all had their heads stuck in them. Not that he ain't got way more than enough. It was just really odd to see them deer with all their heads stuck in them round bales.
Yeah, round bales are something that's covered within it. It takes,
Well, some of them is silage bales. And if they
Yeah.
poke holes in a tube, the silage bales will spoil and rot. The regular round bales won't.
Yep.
But those will, yeah.
yep, that is something that would be covered. Like I said, there is that $500 deductible there, but yeah, that is, hay bales and silage bales are something that would be covered.
Okay. Anybody else got questions for anything on the annual report?
Yeah, George, I have a comment on the tree and subsale.
Go ahead.
I have a comment on a tree and shrub sale, is that I belong to the Ashland County Forestry Department, and I don't know why I can't get Chris Hopman involved a little bit more in the sale. So I would like to have a talk with them, and maybe we could get the Ashland County Forestry involved with that.
How would you like to get the forestry department involved, John?
Yes, I would. I would like to get, I'm on that committee, and I think I could get together with Chris Hoffman and maybe do some great help for us.
And how did you want them to be involved?
Well, I think that maybe if they could donate some money or something like that to buy the trees, and then the private people, if they have a lot of trees, maybe the private people could pick them up and then plant them on their own property.
Okay. Yeah, we should talk about that. I mean, that's basically what we're doing, is selling trees to private landowners already. So if we have the forestry department buy some of the trees from our sale and then resell them. I'm not sure if that's what you're recommending, but
That is exactly what I'm recommending, to get some help from the forestry department. I think the forestry department should be a little bit more involved.
Go ahead, George.
The question for Mary Jo. The tree and shrub trail, is that just here in Ashland, or is it also down county? the part
Just
that you
Ashland.
manage?
Just Ashland.
it's open to any landowners that want to purchase. We have people from even out of state that purchase. We do not regulate who buys trees, but the pickup location is in the city of Ashland.
So all I'm thinking in terms of John's suggestion is that perhaps forestry department wanted to participate, they could have a location down around Butternut, and that might make it easier for some people in the lower part of the county.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
on the annual report. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, back to the tree and shrub sale. I've been getting trees. I ordered 365 trees this year. Only 15 are from Ashland County. For a couple of reasons, one of which are species I can't get through your sale. And two, you went to the larger trees because you got feedback that people said they wanted more, bigger trees. So I ordered the tamarack and something else because I wanted that local here. So I would, this might be another future agenda item is that tree sale, I'm planting larger quantities. So the smaller trees from a price standpoint, make more sense, and then the labor to put them in with the planting bar for the most part. But also, is there a way that we could order trees from some other places? Some of what I order is from the Iowa State Nursery because I can't get them here. And maybe we can coordinate bringing more species in at a time from some other places and then reselling them. So if people want a few of these and those, that they're available in your sale, but you're actually bringing them in, from somewhere else to help with the climate migration of trees. And then we did talk about tree planters in the last year. The Ashland County doesn't have a tree planter, but there's one at the DNR station in Washburn that they will loan out. Is that maybe with some people with, nooks and crannies in their fields or whatever, if they wanted to coordinate getting trees planted with a tree planter, the forestry department there might be helpful, with expertise or, a small tractor to pull something to plant trees. And we start, enabling people to sign a contract to get some of this planted. I have looked for companies that will plant trees with the tree planter, and I can't find anybody anywhere near to do any of this sort of work. It's a business opportunity, I think, but maybe we can somehow, develop that opportunity up here and do more than we otherwise are able to do.
You could check with the Bay Area LCC or Bay Area LLC. It's Michael Sinclair. And who's the other guy?
Niles Merton.
Niles, yeah. They do tree planting.
Okay, good. When I get back, I'll get together with Chris Hoffman and see if I can get something going.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, let's keep this rolling. We can talk about it at other business. Number 7, climate change adaptation discussion. What do you want that to look like? Go ahead, George.
This was previously tabled at our last meeting, so I moved to pick this discussion up off the table.
This is Pat, I'll second.
So what'd you do?
I moved to pick this discussion item off the table because we tabled it at our last committee
Yeah,
meeting.
okay,
So I have moved to pick it up off the table and have the discussion, and Pat has seconded that motion. So we
okay.
just need to vote on whether.
Any other comments or additions on that? So motion been made and second to table the number 7.
To untable, to
Huh?
pick it up off the table.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so in the, with respect to our time this morning, I think this could probably be continued discussion at our next meeting, but I'd like to point out a couple of things. So I refer to our minutes from our meeting of December 7th on this topic of the climate change adaptation discussion, when it says in the second paragraph, Grady informed LCC that the executive committee will discuss and vote on this concept on December 8th, 2022. Now, I haven't heard anything about that. I don't know if they actually took it up in executive committee, but it's my thinking that if we as a committee are going to discuss this topic, we would decide eventually whether or not we wanted to propose or elevate this to the county board level, which would have to be through the executive committee. In other words, if we got our act together about what we have a consensus on, we would send it up to the executive committee. They would decide if they wanted to go forward to the county board, and they would probably refer it to county council to draft an appropriate resolution or ordinance. But just in short, I redistributed the straw man draft that I had circulated last time, which many of us find to be, overly complicated, and maybe not exactly what this committee would like to recommend, but it is a straw man for discussion. So I highlighted, so you don't have to read this whole thing because it's complicated, but that this refers to what is already an ordinance of the county. The county already has an ordinance that says, hey, we're supposed to be looking at changes in our, in the context of our operating environment. We're supposed to be looking at it annually. We're supposed to be looking at the climate change aspects of it. It's all in that existing ordinance. But what I highlighted here is that there's a discussion of whether or not there should be a working subgroup in Ashland County addressing the effects of, changes in our weather patterns and climate. And that there's a question of whether or not this should be considered, by every department in the county. And then there's a question about if a department considers it, whether it should then be the responsibility of the relevant committee relevant to that department, so Land Conservation Committee, to decide whether they'd like to elevate something to the County Board of Supervisors for expression of a resolution or an ordinance. And that if this committee were to elevate this issue, it would go from us to the executive committee, and it would probably have to go before county council to be put in a form that the county board could debate. So that's why I put this before us. I'm in favor of us doing something. I look at this as from a point of view of accountability. I view us as the County Board of Supervisors being responsible to oversee the departments of the county to ensure that they have accountability to the citizens of the county. So I'm not looking to us to be experts about what should be done about changes in the weather patterns or climate. I think our hired experts in each department are the ones for us to take their advice. But I do think it's our responsibility to ask them the question each year, is there anything happening in these changing patterns of weather and climate that are affecting your department? Is it going to cost us? Do we have opportunities? Do we have risks? But that's why I'm bringing this forward, and I yield back the floor.
Well, you've heard me bring it up over and over. Once we with the last time we put this thing together and went through it, the extension did all the work in it. And we asked the chair at that time, and I've asked the new chair, that if, we should get the department heads, or at least have a committee go and talk to the department heads and see how close can they do what the comprehensive plan does or says. Can they not? If not, it's a working plan, so we can change it. And there's no interest in it. So you can put these together all day long and pass them, but unless your chair and your administrator play into that, it doesn't go nowhere. And this is just like this climate adaptation discussion. I've been kind of poking a little bit, and it doesn't sound like the county chair or the administrator is really interested in that. So I hate to say this, Mary Jo, but remember what I said right off the bat, unless we want to take it on and work with this, it's probably not going to go very far. And I was listening at PBS here a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about, like Mary Jo said, some of these trees, like your balsam and some of them, but there's the oak and that do survive and work real heavy on, or work good with some of this polluted air, or whatever you want to say. So there are trees that will clean your air too. So, and those are the things we got to hear about, Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Monroe County was mentioned at our last meeting, so I spent some time looking at Monroe County's climate change task force. So you can go to their website, just Google Monroe County, Wisconsin. You can find their climate change task force. They have meetings every few months. Their minutes and agendas are there. They use WebCT as opposed to Zoom. So WebCT is kind of a earlier competing product. less user-friendly in my book. But so their agendas and their minutes are there. When I look at what they have done, they had a very strong focus on agriculture, water runoff, the ditches, the culverts, the wetland restoration, et cetera. So you could argue that everything that goes on with land and water conservation, from looking at their agendas and minutes, 80 to 90% of what they're doing is related to what this group is already doing. And then they've branched out a bit to some of these other things like new renewable energy, et cetera. So they're pulling in some of that. So, most of us are old enough that we don't want to reinvent wheels at our age. And so Mr. Bousset, he's brought this to us. This is already in place. We are, as a board, neglecting our responsibilities to do what other people have put into writing and passed earlier. You would have been there when this got passed. I wasn't. So this is already in place. We're not reinventing any wheels there. I think if we look at Monroe County and start with that as a template to get the ball rolling, I think, arguably all of this work fits into that. And we could gather up the work Ashland County is already doing to move in this direction and saying, yep, we've done this, we've done that. And then we've identified some things in the last discussion that we would like to work on, and we just plug it into that. So we're, as a county, more conscious of what we're already doing, which is a lot, and then identifying these areas that we could move forward to, with. And then this sheet here, Mary Jo handed this out at the last meeting. It says a county guide reducing emissions through conservation from the land and water at the state, the org there. This has got, I thought, an incredibly nice summary of things to work on. And again, it's tied to what this committee, is charged with. So I think we could form that committee, get it going, draw upon what we're already doing, including what's already in this ordinance. And once we get, that rolling, that template there, following Monroe County's guide. So this isn't too much work, but we're also not redoing work or coming up with things that maybe don't make sense because we're already doing a lot of this. And then from that, once we get that infrastructure in place, including a committee, then we can move forward with that. And Scott, you were talking about the posters, and it occurred to me as you were doing that, I think one of the things that we might have missed last December was the education piece of this. Because part of the committee's charge, I think, if we have a climate change task force, is obviously the education, public hearings, but also working, with the schools, et cetera, on this. And then every school district is going to have a curriculum director, and it would be nice to connect with the curriculum directors on this topic, because one of the things every teacher loves, especially the teachers with K through 8 or so, and especially as you get towards spring, is they like packets of curriculum that engage students, that are interactive. I can see field days going out in the spring with staff from here and actually looking at this sort of stuff. So, but then you have to meet the state standards. So you can say, okay, our objectives are, from the curriculum in the schools, what are your, ones related to, say, science, and then you can design what you do with them to check boxes on meeting curriculum requirements. That way the teachers can say, great, because this has to do with water quality conservation. It checks some boxes that they've got to cover. And now there you are doing something interesting and fun, especially in the spring with these kids. So.
Got a comment, George?
Oh, yes. Okay. So my conundrum is, how do we as a committee come to a consensus among ourselves about what is appropriate in this dimension within our purview as the Land and Water Conservation Committee? And then secondarily, do we ever come to a consensus about what we'd like to recommend, whether or not we'd like to recommend something further for the consideration of the county board as a whole? So I'm just trying to extend the discussion. I'd like to see us continue the discussion at our next meeting. I don't know that we have a consensus among us yet about exactly what we think we should be doing with this.
Well, yeah, that's why we're going to bring it back up on the next one, so we can spend some time discussing this, because we discussed this last fall. And, where do we want to go? What do we want it to look like? And there's where we got to start, what are we really looking for? So, anybody else?
Is there support from the county board chair? Because if a working group or an ad hoc group is going to be established, does the chairperson or does the county board have to support that? If there's no support, is it still possible to form this group?
Go ahead, George.
I think, Mary Jo, it's within the purview of this committee to establish a subgroup within this committee to address this question within the purview of this committee, but not broader to the county board. So to go broader than the responsibilities of land and water conservation, we would not have jurisdiction.
Yeah,
To bring anything to the county board has to be a recommendation of a committee or the administrator or the county board chairman.
I
well,
just want to make sure that a climate change work group does not solely fall on the responsibility of this department and this committee. It's a lot of work. Monroe County has a team of over 20 individuals that represent all county departments, other resource professionals. It's a very broad spectrum of people working collaboratively together to address climate change that impact all different factors of life.
go ahead, George.
Okay, so what I've mandated or suggested as a straw man in what I've handed out is that it be the responsibility of the county administrator to ensure that all departments pay attention to this issue individually without necessitating an overall task force.
Well, if you look in a comprehensive plan, it tells us who is responsible for all of it. So if them people don't take on that responsibility, and most of it comes on the administrator, the county board chair, and certain committee or department heads. So unless you get those people on board, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll point out that there are no members of the comprehensive plan committee appointed at this time. So it would have to be an action of the county board chair and the administrator to appoint members to a comprehensive plan committee if they wanted to act on this on a level is broader than an individual department.
And then does this say that there would be only a few members of that ad hoc committee that would serve on a working group?
Well, I think we're
It's
gonna
in the
keep.
now therefore it be resolved.
Let's keep
Okay.
this for the motion was made and seconded to put it on the table until the next meeting, so we can start discussing. We could discuss this for another hour. Go ahead.
Well, in terms of getting somewhere sooner than later in a way that probably makes sense, is the county board had passed this already, so we use that as a starting point. No, but no, some of the things that are in here. I think,
Okay,
well, okay, I won't argue that point. I think there's responsibilities already in the department heads and the administration that connect to what's in here. But I think we should ask our administrator to take a look at Monroe County, the group they have there. And you're right, it's a larger group and there's a reason for it. But they're meeting regularly and they're working on things. They have a model that's working. I think it'd be good for our administrator to call them. They've been at this a long time and find out what they would recommend to us as a starting point and have him bring a report back in terms of what he would recommend for discussion for this group to consider next to make this work. And I don't think it can be a separate group. I'm going to give you just one example. If you look at solar power right now, with the Inflation Reduction Act, there's money for business owners, government and homeowners to put in solar. What if we had solar down at the county garage, with the highway? They could use solar there, but that's a finance question too. Is it worth that investment? Someone's got to maintain it. There's some work there. So some of these questions overlap a number of different, committees and considerations. And that's why I think trying to isolate this by department is really hard as far as something overarching, because there's going to be financial implications, I think with everything that we do. So that's back to Monroe County. And I think that's why they got that larger group formed there.
Go ahead, George.
okay, 2 points. First, in this straw man, every point in the straw man does refer to a specific reference in the current comprehensive plan ordinance. So to that extent, Pat is correct in saying that that's already supported by the county ordinance. But I also like to say that for purposes of this committee, in my opinion anyway, our land conservation department is doing a great job. I don't see that there's any additional work per se that falls on this department because they're already doing a great job with it. I'm more concerned as a county board member with what's going on in all the other departments and their accountability to the board as a whole.
All right, let's move on. I gotta get out of here in 5 minutes. You got any other business? Go,
Staff
George.
reports.
Go ahead, George.
Move to table this for continued discussion at our next meeting.
This is.
We
Pat.
already did that.
No, this is Pat, I'll second.
We're moving into other business. Is there any other business, Mary Jo?
Point of order?
Hmm?
We need to vote on this motion to table.
We already passed that here about an hour ago, didn't we? To table this discussion.
No, we took the item off the table from the last meeting. Now, if we want to
All
continue.
right,
it-
motion been made and seconded. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
It's gonna be an unending issue and we can't ever give up on it. And I think Mr. Bassett is trying to encourage the county board to be on board with us with what we're already doing. And we need to go through these resolutions in time and address it then. And so
15 years ago, we spent $235,000 grant on this. So if you don't think the county board and the county has been on board, they have been. It's our administration and our county chair and our department heads that are not on board. And nobody,
this just.
well, Mary Jo, yeah, but there again, if you look at the comprehensive plan, it's got nutrient management, it's got farmland preservation. We put that into this next time around. We cut this back, and like I said, it's a working plan. We
This
can
is
we
just
can
to
do that
encourage-
anytime. We're just not doing it, that's all.
This is just to encourage them to take a bigger part in it. We have new people involved and different ideas and things have changed and
We have
it's all
encouraged-
positive.
Till we're blue in the face, I've encouraged. We've tried to get the committee to go to the departments. The chair doesn't say it's gonna happen, it ain't gonna happen. Sorry. They, our committee, our departments should actually come to our county board meetings and put on a 5-minute presentation. We don't even suggest that, so. Anyway, go ahead. Any other business? I gotta get out of here.
Staff reports.
Hmm?
Staff reports.
Well, we pretty much got the staff reports the first time around. I mean, with the year end,
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add?
I gotta go.
Okay, so Chairman Mika has to leave the meeting. As vice chair, I'll finish up with the meeting. We had a motion on made and seconded to table the discussion of the climate change issue. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Yield to Mary Jo for staff reports.
Yeah, so everyone has provided a written staff report. And if you guys want to just give a couple highlights, we'll just start at the end with Seth.
Yep, so a few highlights for me was one of the trainings I was able to complete was AutoCAD, which is a software designing program. I completed that down in Green Bay in late February, early March. It was a 4-day training that was funded partially by grant that was already figured into the grant. And I also received a Wisconsin Land and Water Scholarship to help with some of the travel expenses as well. As far as planning goes, project narrative was developed to support natural flood management projects, specifically around the Toady Ravine. That was that upper reach with the post-assisted log structures I highlighted in the annual report. There was a amendment from the original Act 157 grants that highlighted new technical standards into the practices and natural flood management hazard mitigation plan addendum that was passed at the county board recently. A lot of work went into that as well. And that pretty much covers the main points. Any questions?
Thanks, Seth. Mike?
We had a little bit of a glitch with some of our problems that projects for this year that I'm gonna let Mary Jo go into more detail about. So we've changed gears and are gonna need to fill in the gaps. So I do have some projects that hopefully will take over. First one will be Joma. We hope to get that well decommissioned that did not get put in last year. He's got some more access road that he would like help with out on his farm. And then the next one would be Kleinstaber Bruce, fencing needs. Next one, I'm pretty sure this one go in the PALs, the post assisted log structure for the toadies. And then the next one is the one we had the trouble with Anderson, and then the next one, Town of White River. And again, I'll let Mary Jo say more on that if she chooses to. Going down the next one, Reddinger, that was a carryover from last year that we have to get done this year. And he's on board and feels very confident that he will get it done. He's actually got money. That's another one we did piggyback with NRCS. So he's got money with them too. So there's extra urgency to get that one done. Going down the next one would be Beerwager. We need a waterway system and a wetland restoration. And then the last one would be livestock fencing for Kriskovich and a stream crossing.
So the two projects that Mike's referring to, Brian Anderson and the Town of White River culvert, those are combined with our Act 157, the natural flood management work. We've run into just a long series of permitting challenges. We've spent probably close to 3,000 hours in the past 2 years on field visits, working with the landowner, engineering and design time, surveys. And we had a meeting with some consultants last week that are running a hydraulic modeling study to make sure that the designs that Mike and Stacy have developed could receive permitting. And we were told that it will not receive the FEMA floodplain permits that are required. So at this point, we're not sure if we're going to be able to proceed with those projects. We did receive the first time ever legislative money from the state to implement these practices as flood demonstrations. But what we're running into right now is that the current laws will not allow us to implement practices on that location. So we're going to have some follow-up meetings with the DNR in April, and we should have a project update at our next committee meeting about what's going to happen with that project in particular and that allocation that was made to the county.
Alrighty, looks like I'm next in line. You should have my staff report in front of you there. I think during the annual plan discussion, I talked a fair amount about our invasive species work. Just a couple other things that I wanted to point out. We are going to be hiring or plan to hire at least 2 conservation technicians for the 2023 field season. The application deadline is going to be April the 5th. We already have some pretty good candidates that have submitted their application materials, which is always nice to see them come in early. And obviously they still have a little bit of time until April the 5th to get everything in. I will be at the Northland College Career Expo tomorrow to recruit more candidates there. And then also I've been in contact with about 50 different colleges from all across Wisconsin, Minnesota, and a little bit in Iowa as well. Trying to recruit students to head north and spend their summer in the Ashland area. So more to come on that later. And And let's see, and then also as far as our tree and shrub sale, I just wanted to put in a quick plug where we're definitely open to any volunteers if folks want to help out with our tree and shrub pickup. You are definitely more than welcome and encouraged to do so. That would be a huge help. The dates for that are going to be May the 12th and May the 13th. May the 12th is noon to 5, and then the 13th is 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then I just put a note in there, by no means would you have to stay the full time. If you just want to come and help out for a couple hours, I think that would be kind of a great way to kind of join LWC staff along with our LCC. So definitely consider that if you would please, and let me know if you're interested, and we can talk about dates and times and all that. Or even if you just want to come down and kind of see how the whole process takes place and check out the trees and work with some of our landowners. I think that'd be cool for you folks to see. So just kind of keep me posted on that if you are interested. And let's see, and then I guess the last thing I was going to mention is just the posters that we have. I did include pictures of all of our winners, K through 1, 2 to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 9, and then 10 to 12. So you got pictures of all of those posters there, as well as our speakers, the 2 speakers at the area contest. So there's a few pictures of those folks as well. So yeah, and just again, very, very excited with the numbers that we had, set new records for the amount of posters, 161 total, as well as the 2 speakers. And then also had more participation from schools and teachers, and then also new high water marks for the number of students that advanced to both the area contest and state contest. So again, that's something that definitely been putting a lot of time in. I hope to kind of just keep the ball rolling on that. I think it's very, very important getting that youth education in there, and that's something that's definitely high on my priority list to keep the ball rolling on that, and even expand every year. So any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Thank you.
I'll give my staff report now. I already lightly touched on some of what's on there from 2022 for wildlife damage. In all those across the counties, each of the counties covered had more enrollments than they had in the year previous. I want to say Ashland County almost doubled the amount of enrollments. In 2022 so far into 2023 for where I cover in Bayfield County, they've had 2 farmers enroll for damage from deer, 2 from turkeys. In Ashland County, I've had 2 enroll in the program from elk. I believe I've had an additional 5 people that I'm working with that haven't fully enrolled, that are either about to enroll or receiving assistance for the elk damage. 1 farmer in Ashland County so far for turkey damage, and then none in Iron County. The pictures I've got on there are something that I've been using this winter. Those are things called bag armor. It's a cover that goes over hay bales. It's a woven material, and it's got a little bit of fiberglass in it. And it's weird to touch. It doesn't hurt, but it just like is slightly irritating for a couple seconds. And when elk and deer will put their nose up to it, they just don't go back to it. And whereas like fencing, they'll tear it. Yeah, it's it's irritating for them for a little bit. I absolutely hate wearing gloves, and I'm wearing gloves in that picture. It's not the most fun to work with, but it's very effective. And so have done that for elk, and it's been so far 100% effective. And it is a little expensive, as we, like I lightly mentioned, is between Ashland and Bayfield County. We've purchased a decent amount to have on hand. At a future meeting, I'll probably be asking for a budget amendment for the wildlife damage abatement materials. I've pretty much spent all of the money that we had set aside for this year for wildlife damage abatement on these materials and dealing with elk so far this winter. And there's applications going forward with spreading on different fields for damage that will be at a future date that'll be asking for that, but be ready for that. And then on the ag tech side, I just listed a few things that happened last year on there. The trainings were extremely helpful. Like I said, it was a good bit of training, learning curves. I'm still attending quite a few trainings of webinars, and in-person ones. The UW extension ones are incredibly helpful. I went to a climate intersections conference in Duluth that had just a ton of brand new ag research. That was a very, very good conference. And yeah, so far in 2023, I've been working on getting nutrient management plans written. One's been done in Douglas County, and there's 2 in Ashland County that are about to be completed. I'm planning a field day for Douglas County. I'm planning a field day for Ashland County. I'm planning a field day for Bayfield County. Those take a decent amount of time, and hopefully we get some good participation. Should be some good topics on those. And then, yeah, pretty soon, as soon as weather allows, I'll be pulling out that no-till drill, doing a little bit of spring maintenance. Last year when we talked about on the annual report, as you saw, there was quite a bit of expense with that. That thing completely got worked over. It's in really good shape. I had a lot of people who've used it year over year say that this is the best they've seen it in a very long time. So hopefully we can get some more rentals this year now that people are seeing that it's actually in pretty good shape again going forward. And there's quite a few people on the list already. I don't remember exactly how many, but there's quite a few people on the list already. Yeah, anybody have any questions?
You know, on this wildlife damage with the hay bales there, it's interesting, the land I have where I grew up on a farm east of Mason, there's thousands of acres in ag, and most of that they are plowing into the edge of the woods and leaving corn and hay bales. And winter like this, historically, a lot of deer would die because they didn't have enough food. And then to the north of us, in thousands of acres of wooded land there, there's basically roads through there, and they leave bales of hay and stuff for the deer. You know, these guys are crazy about deer hunting. So it makes me wonder when I think about Ashland County in this report here, if there's any way of, and you'd have to think about this probably, but you've got people who are just nuts about deer, and we've got too many deer, you know, especially where I'm at, you know, a lot of damage to the woods and the crops, and it impacts biodiversity and stuff. But in southern Ashland County, some of these areas, you know, you still have these people who are just all things deer, but they may not own much land or any land. And I'm just wondering if there's a way you could develop a program where people could say, yeah, I'll pay for a round bale, or I'll kick in 50 or $100 towards round bale. And then there's this farmer or farmers with extra round bales up here. And you could arrange for that farmer to take the tractor and drop some round bales in various places. And that way, these people who want to feed the deer, they know there's some round bales out in various places. And the farmer has a way of moving the round bales because they produce them, whereas most other people wouldn't have a way. And that might mitigate the damage and also reduce the deer from congregating, you know, not that we have, you know, real concerns yet about chronic wasting disease, but it might keep the deer further out, spread out. And then the hunters that want all these deers, they're paying for it, and then less burden on the farmer and taxpayers.
Yeah, so with the elk damage that we're seeing, it's almost all in the Marengo area. And to mitigate that, is I was talking with the head of the program for the state with the DNR, and he encouraged me to purchase 11 hay bales, 11 round bales, and have them left out to try to mitigate some of the elk damage that's gone on. So I did purchase 11 hay bales and left them out in one field. Unfortunately, the neighbor like half a mile north of there has some beautiful alfalfa bales that they prefer. And so they've been going over there. They're still eating the 11. I believe they've knocked out about a dozen of those alfalfa bales. They're going everywhere. It's, you give them a little bit and they want more. I'm a little bit afraid of like training them if we're leaving them hay bales, or we're just training them to feed and rely on hay bales. And the other thing is I want to say it was a week ago that the DNR put out a thing discouraging people from feeding the deer. Chronic wasting disease was part of it. And also with like forest regeneration is that if you feed them, there's more concentrated numbers in an area, they browse more, and the forest regeneration suffers from that. And so it would have to be, I'm not sure if it would really pit us against the DNR. If we tried something like that, it's a good idea though. It's interesting and I'll definitely talk with the elk biologist about it because I think it would help. I would be a little worried about CWD, forest regeneration, and then training the animals to actually eat it, but it's an idea. And like I said, we already did purchase 11. So we're already kind of doing it a little bit.
Yeah, they're always gonna find the good stuff. They don't
Yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
all they understand is the good stuff and they're gonna
Yep.
go check it, everything out and do that. But the forest regeneration, when they have these meetings each year about, deer hunting, I read earlier this year that 96% of the trees from the DNR study are negatively impacted by deer. There's just too many deer. The answer is really to reduce these deer numbers.
Mhm.
That's the real, and, I hopefully you can weigh in on, the deer hunting thing. We shouldn't have so many deer. There's too many costs with this.
The deer, I mean, it's not, I don't want to overstep and pretend like I'm an expert in it. From what I understand, there is an awful lot of deer. They're not equally distributed. There are on and around the farmland and they're not, I mean, they are in the national forest, but not nearly as dense. And the people that are coming up want to go to that public land is I've got so many farmers that are like, I have so many deer. You can drive by and you can see 75, 100 deer in a field. And I mean, they get some people to call, but that's where the deer really need to be kind of thinned out. That would help the farmers quite a bit. And part of the program is when they enroll, as it does allow people to publicly hunt those lands. I just wish people would take advantage of it a little more. And I don't know if it's because they have the thought of they want to hunt in the woods. I think that's a big thing with the elk is I would love for some of these hunters that are getting these very few tags that are given out, if they'd come fill them where there's ag damage so that these elk would associate loud sounds with danger, because that would make pyrotechnics more effective. It would help quite a bit. But I think it's more of it's a large issue with distribution. They're on farmland. And there's an awful lot of them. And part of the program is we do give out shooting permits to try to reduce some of these numbers, but you don't want to overuse that. That's a tool that you don't want to abuse. So yeah, totally agree. There are an awful lot of deer on farmland, and you can drive by a road in the evening and you will see an awful lot of deer.
Okay, in the name of time, I'd like to ask Mary Jo if there's further staff reports.
Just mine, but you can read it.
Happy to hear a summary.
3 things on my staff report. Thanks, Matt. I've been doing a lot of grant reimbursement requests. About $322,000 have been brought back into the county from expenditures in 22. Those are highlighted. And then on the back page, under partnership meetings, our staff attended the Wisconsin Land and Water Conservation Association annual conference in March down in the Dells. That was fantastic. I presented at that. And then I'm also participating, the third bullet under that, I'm participating on a work group for the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts called WICI. And this is a group that works on statewide climate issues, and then they produce a report every 5 years. So for the next year, we will be working collaboratively. There's about 20 professionals on this team. And my particular subject that I'm working on is flood management. And we'll be working towards adopting state standards and funding that can be directed towards this type of work. So that's it. If you have any other questions, feel free to give me a call.
Anybody like to raise a question at this time? Okay. With another business, are there any recommendations for agenda items for our next meeting? Miranda, you have a question? You want to recommend anything for our next meeting?
Not yet.
I would like to have a discussion on the nutrient management plans. What are the things to consider and perhaps obstacles of getting more people to sign up? And then the software, is there someone like you that can manage all of the things with the software, or does the landowner have to? And what would you need from the renter, to input that? So those sort of questions.
Any other comments? Any other subjects to be brought up under other business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Moved by Jerry,
I'll second.
seconded by Pat. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.